The old house on the hill, I still remember the first time I laid eyes on the house. It stood at the very edge of town on a lonely hill that overlooked the forest like some forgotten king guarding his decaying kingdom. People whispered about it, always in half-joking tones. But their eyes carried a seriousness that told me the rumors weren't just for fun. They said the house was cursed, that anyone who dared to go inside never came out the same if they came out at all. To most people, the house was nothing more than a local legend, a place to scare children into behaving or to fuel ghost stories at bonfires. But for me, it became an obsession. Every time I passed that hill, I felt its windows staring at me, hollow and unblinking like eyes that had seen too much. Its walls were broken, the roof sagged with age, yet it stood tall, defiant, as if daring anyone to challenge its silence. It was late autumn when everything began. The air was colder than usual, the trees already stripped bare, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. I was walking home from a friend's house when I felt drawn to the hill. The moonlight bathed the old house in a silver glow, making it look less like a ruin and more like something alive, breathing quietly in the darkness. I stopped in the middle of the road, my heart thudding against my chest. I don't know why, but that night, I couldn't look away. Something about the house felt different, like it was waiting. For weeks, I had brushed off the stories. My friends dared each other to knock on the door, to peek through the windows, but no one ever stayed long enough to do it. They claimed they heard footsteps inside when the house had been abandoned for decades. Some swore they saw faces in the upstairs window, pale and watching. Of course, I laughed along, pretending to be braver than I really was. But deep down, curiosity burned inside me. I wanted to know what secrets the house held, what truth lay beneath all the rumors. That night, as I stood there under the moonlight, I made a choice that would change everything. I decided I was going to enter the house on the hill. The days leading up to it felt surreal. My mind was consumed by thoughts of what I might find. I told no one about my plan, not my family. I knew they would try to stop me, and honestly, a part of me hoped they would. But no one knew, and so I was left alone with my growing obsession. The closer the day came, the more the world around me seemed to change. I started waking up at odd hours of the night, my room colder than it should have been, my dreams filled with shadows that whispered in voices I didn't recognize. More than once, I thought I heard someone call my name when I was walking home, but every time I turned around, the street was empty. Still, I couldn't stop myself. On the night I chose to go, the sky was covered in thick clouds, and the air was damp with the smell of rain. The town below was quiet, most of the lights already out, leaving the hill in complete darkness. I carried nothing with no flashlight, no phone, just the weight of my own reckless determination. As I climbed the hill, the wind picked up, howling through the trees like a warning I should have heeded. The grass was tall, brushing against my legs, and the path grew steeper with every step. When I finally reached the top, I stood before the house, my breath fogging in the cold air. Up close, it was worse than I had imagined. The wooden boards were rotting, the windows cracked, the door hanging slightly open as if inviting me in. The smell of damp earth and mildew clung to the air, and somewhere inside, I thought I heard the faint creak of a floorboard shifting under invisible weight. My body screamed at me to turn back, but my curiosity chained me in place. My hand trembled as I reached for the door, the rough wood cold against my palm. That was the moment I realized something. The house wasn't abandoned. It was waiting for me. The day after I stood before the old house, I couldn't focus on anything else. It was as if my mind had been claimed by it, like invisible strings tied me to that rotting structure on the hill. I tried to shake it off, watching TV, scrolling through my phone, even playing video games, but no matter what I did, I kept hearing the creak of that shifting floorboard in my head. It didn't take long before my friends noticed something was off. We were sitting at our usual hangout spot, a rundown basketball court at the edge of town. The nights were getting colder, so we huddled around an old radio that barely worked, telling stories like we always did. Someone brought up the house on the hill, and I felt every muscle in my body tighten. "Bet none of you would last 5 minutes inside that place," Mark said, tossing a bottle cap into the dirt. He was always the loudest of the group, always the one who pushed dares too far. That's because no one's stupid enough to try, laughed Daniel, though the unease in his voice betrayed him. I sat in silence, staring at the cracked asphalt beneath my shoes. Then Mark turned to me, his grin wide and challenging. "What about you?" he said. "You're always acting like the stories don't scare you. Why don't you prove it?" The others laughed, trying to brush it off, but Mark wasn't done. He leaned closer, his voice sharp and taunting. "Come on, you've been staring at that house for weeks. I don't think we haven't noticed. Or are you just scared to admit you're like the rest of us?" My chest tightened, but something in me refused to back down. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was the weight of my own obsession, but the words left my mouth before I could stop them. "Fine," I said. "I'll do it." The group fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "You're serious?" asked, his eyes wide. I nodded, though my stomach twisted into knots. Mark smirked, satisfied. Then it settled. "Tomorrow night, we all go up to the hill. And you, my friend, are going inside." They cheered and laughed, turning it into a game, but I felt the cold truth pressing down on me. This wasn't a dare anymore. It was a trap I had set for myself, and now I couldn't escape. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every rumor I had ever heard about the house. The woman in white seen drifting past the upstairs window. The sound of children's laughter echoing through empty halls. The man who disappeared after saying he'd spend the night inside. I told myself it was all nonsense. It's just stories made to scare people. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself, 'cause I had felt it that night on the hill. The house wasn't just wood and stone. It was something else. Something alive. When the next evening came, my legs felt like lead as I walked toward the hill with my friends trailing behind. They were laughing, joking, nudging each other like this was all harmless fun, but I could barely breathe. The air grew colder with every step, and by the time we reached the top, my hands were shaking. The house loomed over us, its broken silhouette cutting against the cloudy sky. The wind howled through the cracks in its walls, carrying with it the faint smell of rot. "Well," Mark said, clapping me on the shoulder, "here we are. Time to earn your bragging rights." The others fell silent, their laughter fading as the reality of what we were about to do settled in. They stood at the edge of the yard, too afraid to come closer. I couldn't blame them. I stepped forward, the grass crunching under my shoes, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to turn back, but I forced myself to keep moving. When I reached the porch, I froze. The door was still slightly open, just like the night before. It was as if the house had been waiting for me, expecting me. "Go on," Mark called, his voice distant, almost hesitant now. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open wider. The hinges groaned, echoing through the empty space inside. The smell hit me first: mold, dust, and something else, something metallic like rust. Or blood. The darkness inside swallowed everything. My eyes struggled to adjust, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement in the far corner of the room. I stepped inside. The floor groaned beneath me, as if the house was exhaling after years of holding its breath. I glanced back at my friends, their faces pale in the moonlight. They were only shadows now, silhouettes framed in the doorway. Then, before I could say a word, the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through the house, and I realized with a sinking dread that I hadn't closed it. Something else had. The slam of the door rattled through the house like thunder. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, every nerve in my body screaming. For a moment, I thought it was one of my friends playing a trick, but when I spun around, the handle wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pulled, the door stayed locked, sealed as if the house itself had decided I wasn't leaving. My heart hammered in my chest. I banged on the door with both fists. "Guys, open it! Come on, stop messing around." But when I pressed my ear to the wood, I didn't hear laughter. I didn't even hear footsteps. Outside, there was nothing but the wind. The silence inside the house was worse. It was heavy, suffocating, as if the air itself didn't want to be disturbed. Dust floated lazily through the thin beam of moonlight cutting across the floor. And in that quiet, I heard it faint at first, almost like a trick of my imagination. A whisper. It came from somewhere deep in the house, soft and fragmented, like a voice carried on the wind. My blood turned cold. I told myself it was just the old wood settling, the wind slipping through cracks in the walls. But then it came again, clearer this time. My name. It was whispering my name. The sound slithered through the dark hallways, wrapping around me like icy fingers. My mouth went dry, my body trembling. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting around the room. The floorboards groaned under my weight, their echoes stretching into the distance, as though the house were hollow and endless. The room itself was barren, except for an old chair in the corner, broken and covered in dust. Cobwebs hung thick along the ceiling, swaying gently in the draft that seemed to come from nowhere. The smell of rot was stronger now, coating my throat with a metallic taste. I swallowed hard and whispered to myself, "It's just my imagination. Just my mind playing tricks." But the voice came again, sharper this time. "Closer. Come closer." I stumbled backward, my foot catching on a loose floorboard. The sudden crack echoed through the house, and in that silence, it sounded deafening. My hands shook uncontrollably as I reached into my pocket for my phone, desperate for light. The screen lit up, and for a brief second I felt relief, but the glow revealed something I hadn't noticed before. Footprints. They trailed across the dusty floor. It's too fresh to be old, too clear to be mine. Bare feet, small and narrow, leading deeper into the house. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped inside my chest. The air felt colder now, my breath forming mist in front of my face. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the walls. They overlapped, a chorus of hushed voices, speaking words I couldn't understand except for one. My name repeated over and over. I forced myself to move, following the beam of light from my phone. Every step felt heavier than the last, the house groaning beneath me, the whispers guiding me forward like some sinister lullaby. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors on either side warped and crooked. The wallpaper peeled like rotting skin, and the smell of mildew clung to my clothes. One of the doors was slightly open. Footprints led straight to it. I stopped, my throat tight, my hand hovering over the cracked wood. The voices grew softer, almost coaxing, urging me to open it. With a trembling hand, I pushed the door open. The hinges screamed in protest, revealing a small room bathed in shadows. The floor was littered with old toys' wooden blocks, a cracked doll with one eye missing, a ball half deflated with age. The footprints ended there, right in the middle of the room. My phone flickered, the light dimming. I shook it, panic rising in my chest. And that's when I heard a childlike laughter, high-pitched and hollow, echoing around me, though the room was empty. The doll's head turned. I dropped my phone. The light spun wildly across the floor before settling on the far corner of the room. And there, just for a split second, I saw her. A girl. Her skin pale, her hair long and matted, her eyes black voids that swallowed the light. She stood motionless, staring straight at me, her lips moving with the whispers that filled the air. Then the light went out. The darkness swallowed everything, and I was left alone with the sound of her laughter closing in from all sides. Darkness. That was all I could see after my phone went black. I stood frozen in the middle of that toy-strewn room, my ears filled with the sound of laughter that didn't belong in a place like this. It bounced off the walls, circling me, growing louder, until I felt it vibrating in my skull. I tried to steady my breathing, but every inhale came out sharp and ragged. My fingers scrambled along the floor until I found my phone again. With a trembling thumb, I pressed the button. The screen lit up weakly, its battery nearly dead. And just like that, the laughter stopped. The room was silent once more. The doll lay where it had fallen, its one glass eye staring at me, innocent and lifeless again. The toys hadn't moved, but the footprints were gone, erased as if they had never existed. I stumbled backward into the hall, desperate to get away from that room. My body felt heavier with every step, as if the air itself resisted my movement. My only thought was to find another way out, any door, any window, anything that could get me back outside to safety. But then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway stood a staircase, its steps steep and narrow, leading into the shadows above. I shouldn't have looked up, but I did, when I noticed the faint glow of light seeping through the cracks of a door at the top. Every other part of the house was dead and rotting, but that door was alive. The whispers returned, softer now, coaxing, almost gentle. They didn't come from the hallway or the room behind me. It came from upstairs. I shook my head, whispering to myself, "No, I'm not going up there, I'm not." But my feet betrayed me. One step, then another. The staircase creaked loudly under my weight, every sound echoing like thunder in the suffocating silence. My phone's light wavered with each shaky breath I took, throwing warped shadows against the peeling wallpaper. Halfway up, I stopped. My chest was tight, and the air felt colder, heavier, like I was climbing into another world entirely. For a moment, I thought I saw movement at the top of the stairs, a shadow darting past the glow of the door. I wanted to turn back, should've, but something deep inside me knew the truth. This house wouldn't let me leave until I saw what was behind that door. When I reached the top, I stood frozen in front of it. The wood was old, cracked, splintering along the edges, yet the faint glow spilling through was steady, unnatural, like candlelight that never flickered. My hand hovered over the doorknob, slick with sweat. And then I heard it. Thump, thump. Something was moving inside. Slow, deliberate, dragging footsteps, pacing back and forth. I swallowed hard, whispering into the silence, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Whispers swelled surrounding me, louder than ever before. They spoke in a language I couldn't understand, guttural and broken, but the tone was clear. They wanted me to open the door. Against every ounce of reason, I reached for the knob. It was icy cold, like touching metal left in the snow. My hand shook as I twisted it, but the knob wouldn't move. The door was locked. Relief flooded through me. For a second, I thought maybe that was it. Maybe the house just wanted to scare me, to lead me here, but not let me inside. Then the whispering stopped. Silence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. And from the other side of the door, something scraped against the wood. Fingernail, then another. Slowly, methodically, it dragged down the surface, leaving a high-pitched screech that set my teeth on edge. I stumbled back, my phone flickering in my hand. The scraping grew louder, more desperate, until it sounded like dozens of hands clawing at the door, scratching to get out. I turned, ready to run down the stairs, when suddenly, bang! The door shook violently, rattling on its hinges. Dust fell from the ceiling as the entire frame groaned under the force. My heart leaped into my throat. Another bang, louder this time, like something massive was throwing itself against the wood. The glow beneath the cracks pulsed, brighter and brighter, spilling into the hallway like liquid fire. And then I heard it clearer than the whispers, clearer than anything else that night. A voice, low, menacing, drawn out like a growl. "Let me out." The knob twisted violently, though no hand was on it. The door shook, ready to burst open at any second. I backed away, my legs weak, the light from my phone flickering and dimming. And that's when I realized something horrifying. The lock wasn't keeping me out. It was keeping whatever was inside in. The pounding on the upstairs door still echoed in my head as I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. The voice, low and guttural, repeated its demand, a sickening growl that seemed to vibrate in my bones. Let me out. Every instinct screamed at me to run. I bolted down the stairs 2 at a time, clutching my nearly dead phone like it was the only tether to reality I had left. My breath came in sharp bursts, each inhale burning my lungs. The house didn't want me to leave. I could feel it. The whispers followed me, crawling through the walls, snaking down the staircase. They weren't just sounds anymore. They pressed against my skin, seeping into my ears, my head, my chest. My vision blurred as the air grew heavier, darker, as if the house was swallowing the very light from my phone. I hit the bottom of the stairs and sprinted for the door. I yanked the handle, it still wouldn't budge. Locked, sealed. My heart sank. "Please," I shouted, slamming my fist against the wood. "Somebody help me," silence answered. Then movement. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught it. A shadow darting across the hallway, quick and deliberate. My body went cold. I whipped the phone around, shining its weak glow into the darkness. Nothing, just peeling wallpaper and broken floorboards. But when I turned back, I froze. The shadow was standing in front of me. It wasn't a person, not fully. Shape-shifted and wavered like smoke, but its form was unmistakable. Tall, human-like, head tilted slightly as if watching me. Its edges bled into the dark, and yet I could feel its eyes hollow, endless, boring into me. I stumbled back, dropping my phone. The light spun across the floor, landing just enough to show me that the shadow wasn't alone. There were more of them. Dozens. They clung to the walls, the ceiling, the corners of the room. Their movements were unnatural, jerking, twitching, as though they were struggling to hold their shapes. They whispered in unison, their voices overlapping, hissing my name, "Come with us." I scrambled for my phone, my hands slick with sweat, my breath shaking. The shadows crept closer, their bodies stretching and distorting like they were made of liquid night. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to move. The hallway twisted around me longer than before, the house shifting like a labyrinth, bending itself to keep me inside. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but I couldn't stop. Every step echoed louder than the last, and still, the whispers followed, crawling along the walls. I reached a doorway and slammed it shut behind me, leaning against the rotting wood. My chest heaved as I struggled to catch my breath. The room was pitch black except for the faint glow of my phone, and for a brief moment, I thought I was safe.
Ow.
A shadow stretched across the floor, not mine. It slithered toward me, long and distorted, its head tilting in the same way as the figure I had seen before. My body froze, my voice caught in my throat. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. The shadow grew taller, rising up the wall, its shape twisting into something in human limbs too long, fingers claw-like. Its mouth opened wide, impossibly wide, revealing nothing but darkness inside. My phone flickered again, and in that split second of light, I realized the shadows weren't just in this room, they were everywhere. Behind me, above me, crawling across the ceiling like spiders. Their whispers overlapped, turning into a deafening chorus of voices, some high-pitched like children, others low and guttural like the voice from upstairs. They circled me, closing in. I swung my phone wildly, the light barely piercing the darkness. For every shadow I pushed back, 3 more slithered forward. Their hands reached out, brushing against my arms, my face cold as ice. "No," I shouted, my voice cracking. "Stay away from me." But the house didn't listen. The shadows pressed closer, their forms wrapping around me, pulling at my clothes, my skin. I felt the temperature drop, my breath visible in the freezing air. My knees buckled, my vision swam, and just as I thought I was about to collapse completely, the whispers stopped. All at once, the shadows froze. Their heads snapped toward the ceiling, as if hearing something I couldn't. Silence. Then, from upstairs, the pounding on the locked door returned. Louder this time, angrier. The whole house shook with each impact. Dust rained down from the ceiling, the floor beneath me trembling. The shadows recoiled, retreating into the corners, melting back into the walls as if terrified. I stood there, shaking, barely able to breathe, realizing one horrifying truth. The shadows weren't trying to hurt me, they were trying to hide from whatever was upstairs. The shadows had retreated into the walls, their whispers gone, their shapes dissolved like smoke. For the first time since stepping into the house, I was completely alone. But that silence wasn't comforting, it was worse. The pounding upstairs hadn't stopped. Each bang shook the walls, rattling the floorboards beneath my feet. Whatever was behind that locked door, it wasn't giving up. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing, but my chest felt tight, like the air was growing thinner with each passing second. My phone buzzed weakly in my hand, its battery icon flashing red. I knew it wouldn't last much longer, and once it died, I'd be trapped in total darkness. I needed to find a way out. I forced myself forward, moving down the hallway again, careful with each step. The house felt different now, heavier somehow, like it knew I had seen too much. The boards creaked under my weight, but beneath the sound I noticed something else. A hollow echo. Curiosity gnawed at me. I crouched low and knocked on the floorboards. The sound was unmistakable, empty space beneath me. My pulse quickened. Somewhere under this house, there was something hidden. I searched the walls with the dim glow of my phone, until I found it a narrow door, almost invisible behind layers of rotting wallpaper. My hands shook as I pulled at the warped wood. It groaned loudly before finally swinging open to reveal a set of stairs spiraling down into darkness. The basement. I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but something deeper pulled me forward. If there were answers to what haunted this place, I felt certain they were buried below. The air grew colder with each step, damp, heavy. The smell of mold and something far worse, something metallic, like dried blood, stung my nose. The whispers returned, faint at first, then louder, circling me, urging me deeper. When I reached the bottom, I shined my phone around the room, my stomach twisted. The walls weren't stone or brick. They were dirt claw marks carved deep into them, as if someone had tried to dig their way out with bare hands. And the floor. It was covered in mounds, and even piles of earth, each one marked with crude wooden planks driven into the soil like makeshift gravestones. Some of them had names scratched into the wood, barely legible under years of decay. Others were blank. I stepped closer, my knees weak. The whispers grew louder around me, not angry this time, but mournful, crying, pleading. I reached out and brushed dirt from one of the planks. The name carved into it made my blood run cold. Daniel. I stumbled back, my throat dry. Daniel, my friend, the one who had been with me on the hill tonight. His name was here, on a grave. I frantically checked the other planks. Mark, Sarah, Jacob. All names I knew, all names of people still alive, at least. They had been. My vision blurred as panic rose in my chest. These weren't just graves, they were warnings, prophecies. One mound had no plank at all, just fresh dirt, darker than the rest, like it had been disturbed recently. My stomach twisted as the truth sank in. That grave was waiting. For me? My phone flickered again, the screen dimming, shadows stretching across the dirt walls. The whispers grew frantic, overlapping, desperate now. I could almost make out the words. Don't let it out. Don't let it out. The pounding upstairs grew louder, shaking the very foundation of the house. Dust rained down from the ceiling, the dirt walls crumbling at the edges. The voices swelled in panic, screaming now, though I couldn't understand all of their words. But one sentence came through clearly. It's already awake. My phone went black. The basement plunged into darkness, and then I felt it breathed, hot, rancid, brushing the back of my neck. I spun around, clawing for any light, but I saw nothing. Just the suffocating dark. My chest heaved, my body frozen, and then, low and guttural, I heard it again, the same voice from behind the locked door upstairs. You found them. Now it's your turn. The grave shifted. The earth moved, as though something underneath was trying to claw its way out. I stumbled backward toward the stairs, but the voices of the dead screamed louder, drowning my thoughts, begging me to run, to escape. My shaking hands found the railing, and I dragged myself up step by step, tripping, scrambling, until I burst back into the hallway above. The pounding had stopped. The house was silent again. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't escaped. I had only woken something that had been buried for far too long. I staggered into the hallway, my lungs burning, my hands still covered in dirt from the graves below. The silence in the house pressed against me, thicker than before. No whispers, no shadows, just the sound of my own ragged breathing. But silence in this house wasn't safety, it was a trap. I clutched the dead weight of my phone, its screen black, useless now. Without its glow, the hallway was a tunnel of darkness, broken only by faint silver slivers of moonlight sneaking through the cracked windows. Every step I took echoed far too loud, bouncing down the walls, as if the house wanted to announce where I was. I forced myself forward, my only thought. Find a way out. The front door came into view, crooked and broken, the same one that had slammed shut when I first entered. My heart leapt with desperate hope. I ran to it, gripping the handle with both hands, yanking as hard as I could. It didn't move. Please. I screamed, slamming my shoulder into the wood. Let me out. The silence answered. And then, soft as a sigh, the whispers returned. Not from the basement this time, not from the walls, from behind me. Spun around, pressing my back to the door. The air rippled like heat waves in the hallway. Shadows began to bleed across the floor, sliding along the walls, slithering toward me. But they weren't alone. Between them, something else moved. The girl. The same pale figure I had seen in the toy room. She drifted slowly into the moonlight, her black eyes locked on me, her lips moving without sound. Her body twitched with jerky, unnatural motions, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. I pressed harder against the door, my throat tight. "Stay away from me." Her lips stopped moving. And then, for the first time, I heard her voice, not a whisper, but a high, piercing shriek that split the silence and rattled the glass in the windows. The shadows surged forward with her cry, crawling across the floor like a tide of black water. I ran. I didn't know where. My legs just moved, carrying me deeper into the maze of hallways. The house shifted again, stretching corridors, bending rooms, twisting itself into something endless. Every corner I turned, every door I opened, led me back to the same place. Darkness and whispers, pounding upstairs returned. Bang, bang. Dust rained from the ceiling as the thing behind the locked door hurled itself against it. Harder than before. The girl screamed again, and the shadows scattered, retreating into cracks and corners as if afraid. That's when I realized she wasn't in control. She was running from it too. The house shook violently, the walls groaning, floorboards splintering beneath my feet. I stumbled into a large room I hadn't seen before, dining room. The long table was covered in rotting cloth, broken plates, and rusted silverware. A chandelier dangled crookedly from the ceiling, swaying though no wind touched it. And then, without warning, the upstairs door burst open. The sound was deafening, like wood shattering under an explosion. The pounding stopped. Silence swallowed everything. I didn't want to look. My body screamed not to, but I couldn't help it. My eyes drifted upward toward the stairwell. Stepped out. At first, it was only darkness spilling down the stairs, thick and crawling, spreading across the floor like ink. Then, from within that darkness, something emerged, massive, shifting, wrong. Its limbs were too long, its body hunched and twisted, its head nearly scraping the ceiling. But its face, God, its face. It was a blur, shifting constantly, flickering between hollow eyes, screaming mouths, and familiar features. For a split second, I swore I saw my own face staring back at me, twisted in agony. The girl shrieked again, louder, more desperate, and the thing turned toward her. She darted into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as she appeared. Then its head snapped toward me. Every part of me froze. My body refused to move. The air turned to ice, my breath crystallizing in front of me. Its whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were screams. Layered voices tearing through my skull, begging, demanding, commanding. Join us. My legs buckled, and I fell to my knees, hands clamped over my ears. But it didn't help. The voices were inside me now, filling my chest, my bones, every corner of my mind. The chandelier above swayed violently, the table rattling as the house shook under the weight of its presence. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed instantly, devoured by the cacophony inside my head. And then, just before my vision blurred into darkness, I understood. I was never meant to escape. The house didn't want me to leave. It wanted me to stay. Forever. The voices tore through my skull, 1,000 whispers and screams all at once, clawing at the edges of my sanity. I pressed my palms against my ears, but there was no shutting them out. They weren't around me anymore. They were inside me. The creature loomed in the dining room doorway, its body twisting, stretching, flickering between shapes that made no sense. One moment it was hunched and massive. The next it was thin and skeletal, its limbs jerking like broken marionette strings. Its face never stayed the same, sometimes hollow-eyed, sometimes grinning, sometimes screaming with my own voice. I crawled backward, my back hitting the wall. The table rattled violently, plates shattering to the floor as the chandelier above swayed like it was about to fall. My heart slammed against my chest so hard I thought it might burst. "Please," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was, begging God, the house, or the thing in front of me. The whispers answered, "Stay." The creature lunged. I scrambled to my feet, ducking as the chandelier snapped from the ceiling and crashed into the table, sending splinters flying. I ran through the nearest door, slamming it shut behind me, though I knew it wouldn't hold. The wood groaned under my weight as I pressed against it, my lungs burning with every frantic breath. For a moment there was silence. No pounding, no whispers, no voices, just the sound of my own heart thundering in my ears. I turned. The room was small, almost bare, except for a mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Its glass was cracked, spider webbing out from the center. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, shaking, covered in dirt and sweat. But then it smiled. I froze. My lips hadn't moved, but the reflections had. The cracks in the glass deepened as my reflection tilted its head, the same way the shadows had. Its eyes darkened, hollow, until there was nothing but black void staring back at me. "You're one of us now," it whispered. I stumbled back, my body trembling, but the room seemed to close in around me. The walls pressed closer, the ceiling lower, the mirror stretching wider, as if it wanted to swallow me whole. I turned and bolted back into the hallway. The house was alive now. I could feel it, breathing walls pulsing, floorboards shifting beneath my feet like a heartbeat. The whispers were everywhere, pouring from the ceiling, seeping through the cracks, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. I sprinted for the front door again, my shoulders slamming into it, my fists pounding desperately. "Let me out," my throat raw, and then without warning, it opened. Cold night air hit my face like a wave. I stumbled out onto the porch, gasping for breath, tears stinging my eyes. The hill stretched before me, bathed in moonlight, the trees swaying gently in the distance. I was free, or so I thought. I turned to look back at the house, expecting to see my friends outside waiting for me, but there was no one. The hill was empty, silent. My friends were gone, as though they had never been there at all. The house stood still, its broken windows reflecting the moonlight, its door hanging open like a mouth waiting to swallow me again. For the first time, it looked peaceful, harmless, just a ruin on a hill. But I knew better. As I staggered down the path, the whispers followed me. Faint at first, then louder with every step I took. They weren't trapped in the house anymore. They were in me. By the time I reached the edge of town, I realized something terrible. The house had let me go, because I wasn't leaving it behind. I carried it with me. The whispers never stopped. At night, when I close my eyes, I see the pale girl's face. I hear the pounding from upstairs. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see something smiling back at me that isn't me. I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret. People are starting to notice. They say I talk to myself when I'm alone, that I laugh at things that aren't funny, that I stare into the dark like I'm waiting for someone. They're right, because I know it's only a matter of time before the house calls me back. And when it does, I won't be leaving again. This isn't just a haunting, it's forever.